There are certain former UFC fighters who left the company in pursuit of a better contract. However, this move proved disastrous for them, where they don't look like the same fighters they used to be. So here is 5 fighters who became worse after leaving the UFC. Number 5. Koscheck is a former UFC welterweight contender whose last fight in the UFC was a guillotine choke loss to Eric Silva at UFC Fight 54. After suffering 5 losses in a row, Bellator MMA approached him and signed him to their promotion, who was scheduled to make his debut against Mauricio Alonso at Bellator 172. In the fight, he would get violently finished in the first round. Koscheck was always a top contender in the UFC, where recently has declined rapidly. He doesn't look like the same fighter he used to be and needs to walk away from the sport. Hopefully, he could pull off a win and retire with his hands raised. Number 4. Frank Mir is the former UFC heavyweight champion whose last fight in the UFC was a knockout loss to Mark Hunt at UFC Fight 85. He would fail his drug test straight after the fight, where he was later released from the promotion. He was signed with Bellator MMA, where he would face MMA legend Fedor Emelianenko in his debut at Bellator 198. In the fight, he would brutally get knocked out in the first round. Frank Mir is currently on a 3-fight losing streak, where he urgently needs to turn things around. He is an excellent fighter who is very talented, where hopefully he could come back better than ever. Number 3. Lorenz Larkin is a former UFC welterweight contender whose last fight in the UFC was a TKO victory over Neil Magny at UFC 202. After fighting out his UFC contract, he was offered a better contract with Bellator MMA and was given an immediate title shot at then reigning welterweight champion Douglas Lima at Bellator 180. In the fight, he was overwhelmed by Douglas Lima's ferocity and lost the fight by unanimous decision. He next faced Paul Daly at Bellator 183, where he would get knocked out in the second round. He finally picked up a win when he dominated Fernando Gonzalez by unanimous decision at Bellator 193. It finally looks like Lorenz Larkin has found his rhythm and has settled well after a few crazy fights. Hopefully he is able to build himself up into a contender and challenge for the title in the future. Number 2. Antonius Silva is a former UFC heavyweight fighter whose last fight in the UFC was a knockout loss to Roy Nelson at UFC Fight 95. After suffering 3 losses in a row, he was cut from the UFC roster. He would next face Ivan Chitrov at Titrov Boxing Promotion, where he would lose the fight by unanimous decision. He would next face Vitaly Minakov at Fight Nights Global 68, where he would get knocked out in the second round. Antonius Silva is currently on a 5-fight losing streak and has tremendously slowed down over the years. He has been a top heavyweight for many years, where I believe his fighting days are near the end, where hopefully he can pick up a win and walk away from the sport. Number 1. Benson Henderson is the former UFC lightweight champion whose last fight in the UFC was a split decision victory over Jorge Masvidal at UFC Fight 79. After his UFC contract finished, he made the decision to go over to Bellator MMA and had the goals to become the champion in the promotion. In his first fight, he was given an immediate title shot against then Bellator welterweight champion Andrei Koreshkov at Bellator 153. In the fight, he would absolutely get dominated by a much bigger fighter, losing the fight by unanimous decision. He would next defeat Patricia Pitbull by TKO leg injury, and would next lose 2 fights to Michael Chandler at Bellator 165 and Patricky Pitbull at Bellator 183. He finally broke his 2-fight losing streak when he picked up a guillotine choke victory over Roger Huerta at Bellator 196. Benson Henderson has declined rapidly whilst in Bellator MMA and is struggling against their best fighters. Hopefully he is able to start a successful run and challenge for the title in the future.